Hi again. Hi again.
Hi, Sebastian!
Astro. It's my unbelievable pleasure, honor, privilege to present my best friend, long-term friend, Astro Teller, grandson of infinitely many noble lords of similar names, head of Google X, now X Labs, and general genius and wonderful human being to you. Some of you might know him, but welcome.
Thank you very much.
My very first question I can't help is, what's this with this jacket?
This is just what I put on this morning. But in fact, I got this jacket. I think someone was trying to prank me. They gave me this jacket and a man named Craig Barrett, who at the time also worked at Alphabet, a matching jacket. It wasn't an R2-D2 jacket, it was a Wookiee jacket. So it had like the bandolier across here and like you pull up the hood and it was all fuzzy. And he just said, no way, I'm not wearing that. Because we were going to spend a day emceeing an event kind of like this together. Then he didn't wear it and I just thought, that's a little bit lame. I'm going to wear my R2-D2 jacket. So even though I'm into Star Wars, but I'm not super into Star Wars. But so I wore it for the day, just for fun, I don't know. And then I got into it. I'm just enjoying being a robot, I guess.
I guess hiring robots? Just kidding. But you just joined us as a hiring partner.
Yes, we did.
That is great. So, I think shortly after I got fired, I think this became the best place to work in Silicon Valley.
No, but that's a total coincidence.
Yeah. Ouch. So what are you hiring?
Well, we hire in lots of things. We're certainly hiring roboticists. We care a lot about machine learning. A lot of the work that we do at X is systems integration work. We don't do a lot of basic science, essentially, but we work on problems that haven't been solved before. And so a lot of that turns out to be complex, iterative system integration kind of work, taking pieces that already exist in the world, sometimes that custom versions of them have to be made, and putting them together in unusual ways, getting it out in the world, trying, you've discovered that you're wrong, and you make a new design and you repeat, is the sort of general way that it feels, I think, for all of the X projects. So people who are good at that.
I want to take you 50 years in the future. Tell me what's going to be interesting.
Awesome, let's go.
I don't want to wait this long. What's going to be interesting in 50 years? 30 years?
I think the world is going to be almost unrecognizable in 20. So,
is this good or bad?
I'm sure it'll be a mix. I think mainly it'll be a pretty exciting and mostly positive place. I'm sure it's going to be disorienting getting there, though.
So you're not talking about a nuclear winter or something?
No. I think that the world is going to turn out to surprise us more positively than negatively. But the world is going to be incredibly different in 20 years. The saying is, and I think that this is correct, that people tend to overestimate the progress of technology and the rate of change in the short term. That is, 3 years from now, they think the world will be more different than it is, and they underestimate it in the medium term. Over 10 to 20 years, I think we all collectively can't really imagine how different it will be. My rule of thumb would be 20 years from now ought to be roughly like 100 years in the past. So if you can imagine the last 100 years of change in the next 20, I think that that's probably a realistic estimate for how different the world will feel.
Wow, that means people have to learn a lot along the way.
Yes, I think our society is not yet wired for the rate of change that we're going to be experiencing.
One thing that always impresses me on you is your attitude towards innovation and specifically things like fear and failure and so on. You celebrate when you fire people or when projects fail, is that correct?
Yeah, I'm not sure we would celebrate letting someone go, though sometimes it is the case that we help people to go to a place that is better for them, and I have, at least on occasion, had them...
You liberate them.
Yes, absolutely. It is sometimes the case that, Susie can be great somewhere, but the place she currently is not where she can be great, and it is a favor to Susie's team and to myself, but also to Susie, to tell that to Susie. Certainly not telling her that and letting her just suffer indefinitely, being not excellent when she has the capacity to be excellent, is not doing anybody, particularly Susie, a favor.
We're doing this, by the way, with all our students. We call
You're
it
liberating all of them?
we graduate them.
Yes, well, I do the same thing with our projects.
Yeah.
Yes.
Stanford does it. I remember we have these wonderful, pompous moments
Yes.
when we kick out every student. And the parents come to celebrate with them about this. It's really true.
That's why we call it graduation for the projects at X, so instead of feeling like they're being kicked out of Eden, they feel a little bit more like they're leaving home and going to college, hopefully.
I had Steve Blank here before, and I asked him this one question, and I want to ask you the same question. I wanted you to go back to your 18 years old self when you're just entering college. What advice would you give yourself?
You know, one of the things that I think about frequently, if I could go back and change something, it was a little moment, but it's become actually bigger for me over time instead of smaller. I was a junior, so maybe 19, 20, something like 20 years old probably, at Stanford. And my brother had just gotten to Stanford. He was a freshman. He was doing an undergraduate degree in physics, but he was spending actually more of his time doing acting, being a thespian, than doing his physics degree. And I was getting to know his mentor, whose name was Winter Mead. And after one of the shows, Winter came up to me and he said, "You'd be great in the theater. You should really join the company and do something." And I said, "Oh no, I'm really busy." I had some set of excuses, and I was really busy. That's not why I said no. I was afraid. I don't know. I think it was probably because it was important to me. And I've regretted that ever since. Not because I want to be in the theater. It just bothers me. It's one of the few things in my life I didn't do because I was afraid, and I know I didn't do it because I was afraid. And I've thought ever since, I'm not doing that. I can fail for all kinds of reasons, but I'm not going to fail again because I was just too afraid to try.
So now when you're afraid, you do it?
Yeah, I am actually counterphobic in that sense.
How can you drive a car?
I'm not afraid to drive
Okay,
a car.
sorry.
Maybe I should be, but I'm not.
scared to run a red light. Different story. You've done an unbelievably amazing job as the Q of Silicon Valley, the magician who puts balloon into the stratosphere, builds self-driving cars, and whatever it is that you've been doing in X. What is your recipe
Thank you.
to, and maybe I take a tiny bit of credit as well, but what's your recipe, no, that's not true, to, as this organization evolves and matures, and quite frankly, it gets larger in size, to keep it fresh? How do you keep like the innovative genes going?
I think a lot about all of the tensions that we have at X. And some of the tensions are fairly straightforward, some of them less straightforward. But for example, we have to have raging optimism, or we would never try the things that we try. But if you just empower people to have raging optimism, go forth, be crazy. The crazier the better, without limit. You are not going to get good results. So there has to be a kind of scathing paranoia and skepticism that balances out that optimism. You have to keep those in balance if you're actually going to get what you want. But that's not the only kind of tension that we have. Another one is what you could say positively would be the support structures at X, or if you want to be negative about it, the bureaucracy at X. So we want to bring to bear on projects the right help at the right time, to amplify them or to help move them onto a better path when they're sort of veering off of the path. In the best case scenarios, that's wonderful, of course. It sounds really positive the way I just said that, but if it's done wrong, it sure feels like bureaucracy to the project leads, and they sometimes express that to me, and bureaucracy is the last thing that I want to produce. So that's another example where having no structure doesn't make any sense. Then we're just a venture capitalist, we're just giving people money and walking away. That doesn't make sense for us to do that. But if we smother them with attention, if I think that I know how to do their job better than them, one of us is redundant. Like, that's a bad plan. So getting that light touch is another example where both ends of the spectrum are bad, and there's somewhere in the middle that's right, and we're always sort of searching for it.
Many our students and partners came from, I think, over 20 countries, which is amazing, including places as far away as Jordan and Estonia. What is the magic of Silicon Valley? And what can you take home to different countries?
There's something in the water here that's certainly palpable, I think, for the people
So take
who
the
live
water
here.
home.
I'm not actually suggesting taking the water home. You know, one of the ways that is not my favorite phraseology, but I've heard it frequently, is a culture of creative destruction. And so that's not what I would take home, but I think that that's what you might hear frequently. One of the ways I might prefer it would be a healthy embrace of failure. So someone was just asking me, it was a Korean newspaper, it was asking me how can the companies in Korea do better. They feel really afraid to take risks because they might look bad. And I don't know if this is true, but this was a suggestion I gave yesterday morning to this reporter to take back to companies in Korea, which was, it's not that we want to look bad in Silicon Valley. I don't think that's it at all. But I'm willing to look arbitrarily stupid right now if that's what it takes to win in the long run. I think it's a time horizon difference. If you understand and can connect that being open to being wrong now is the essence of learning, and that learning is the superpower that causes you to win, then you become hungry to be wrong and to start over and to try new things now, no matter how imperfect it makes you look in the short term, because your time horizon on which you're unwilling to lose is very long. And so I think even though there is a culture of speed in Silicon Valley, I believe that the length of the time horizon over which people are trying to optimize themselves being longer may actually be part of the secret sauce.
We have microphones, and I want to open up for audience question in a minute. So if you want to line up between these two microphones, please, as usual. But I have one question while you're lining up. Tell us about your son.
Well, so he's referring to the fact that my son finished his first nano degree a little over a year ago. His name is Griffin Teller, and he did the Introduction to Computer Science. He really enjoyed it. He was just turned 12 when he finished it, and he's struggling his way, working hard. I don't know, struggling might not be fair, even through the machine learning course. And I told Sebastian this over dinner last week, and he said, oh, that's actually one of the really hard courses. And I went home and I said, you know, Griffin, you're going pretty slowly through it. Sebastian says that's one of the really hard ones. Do you want to ask for help? Do you want to switch to one that's easier? And he's like, no, I got it. I have to go back and learn a whole bunch of extra math every time I get to the next phase. He's 13 now. So, but I'm very, very grateful to Udacity because Griffin's a bright boy and he's hardworking and he's focused, but that by itself, I was just saying back in the green room, wouldn't actually have translated to something like this. I don't think it's an accident that he's not doing chemistry or physics or history. There isn't a platform for supporting him doing that, and Udacity has actually provided him with just the right kind of structure, so he has to work hard, he can self-pace his learning. It means a huge amount to him. It's actually part of why I'm here today.
We have over 20 recruiters outside. And I think you should bring him here and have a talk with him.
Excellent.
Otherwise, we'll be tuition back. Let's start in the center.
Okay. Hello, Dr. Teller. Could you perhaps share a little bit about the use of reinforcement learning in hedge fund, perhaps?
Reinforcement learning in which domain?
In hedge funds or financial.
Hedge funds. I'm not sure reinforcement learning is the only issue. Let me answer the question slightly more generally. The time, I believe, where the application of machine learning in many domains to the individual problems as posed by humans is ending. It'll go away over 10 or 20 years. It won't happen overnight. The thing which is starting to be the case, and one of the areas in which you can see this happening is hedge funds, is where the questions themselves are being asked by machine learning. Now, it often won't look and machine learning being deep nets and reinforcement learning and a number of other tools, it sometimes won't look like the question is being asked, but when you do end-to-end learning of any kind in any domain, you are essentially leaving up to the system that's doing the learning more of the decomposition of the problem to the computer, to the learning system, that's part of the task, the featureizing of the data, the decomposition of the problem. That's what humans used to do. And so I think that movement is something we're going to see a lot more of. Computers essentially starting to ask the questions and structure the problem as well as actually solving the problem. And hedge funds is definitely one of the areas in which that's happening.
All right. Thank you so much.
Would you summarize your view of failure on failure as fail fast, learn faster?
Yeah, I mean, fail fast is lip service, which is thrown around very liberally all around the Valley and other places, and I think it largely does not get people what they want. And so there's nothing wrong with the term fail fast, but that and $1.50 will get you on the bus. The problem is that there's the lip service of whatever you say, like fail fast, and then there's the actual way that people behave. And the reason that those pointers are so different is because these are the emotional paths of least resistance in your organization. And you can say fail fast until the cows come home. But if you punish people, in fact, if you do anything short of actively rewarding them when they fail, it doesn't matter that you say fail fast. So what do you mean when you say fail fast? And so we have mechanisms at X to reward people when they stand up and they say, that was a worthwhile experiment we just ran, and the result of the experiment is the null hypothesis, i.e., we shouldn't keep doing that. Great, let's go on to the next one. You reward them in that moment. You don't punish them for admitting that the result of the experiment was the null hypothesis. That's often the answer when you run an experiment. But that's not how most corporations work. That's not how people feel when they go to work in the morning. They want to get an attaboy from their peers. They want to get an attaboy from their manager. If they can't get one by saying my thing didn't work, they will not say my thing did not work.
Hey, Dr. Teller. So great talk. So I had a question. So does moonshots work on problems like starvation and hunger? I mean, can we ever solve real problems today with technology? Like starvation and hunger as an example.
Sure. I don't have a ready solution for starvation and hunger, but I don't think that any problem is immune to moonshot thinking. So at least the way we would define it in X, a moonshot has three basic components. There has to be a huge problem with the world that you can name and you want to address. You have just named a huge problem in the world. The second is you have to have a radical proposed solution to that problem. Not radical because you want to be cool and get cool points in the world for having been weird, but in the spirit of trying to go to a new place, to try something that people haven't tried, to not just be in a smartness contest with everyone else who's tried to address the problem, but to be in more of a bravery and creativity contest with the problem itself. So that's the second thing, having a radical proposed solution. And then the third, at least as we would define it, but I suppose there are other ways of addressing problems, but at X, we would say that the third aspect that you have to bring in order for it to be a moonshot is you have to present some kind of breakthrough technology or proposed set of technologies which brought together would be a breakthrough that would enable this science fiction sounding product or service that would solve that problem. Put in that way, there's no reason that you couldn't solve starvation and hunger using those tools. And I hope you do.
Thank you.
So you just described some of the criteria for what makes a good project, but where do the projects come from originally, and how do you go through vetting them and forming like a more long-term project?
So I could imagine other ways of doing it, but roughly the way it feels at X is there's a huge pile of ideas on the metaphoric table. Anyone can put them on the table, and by the way, we have a mechanism where you guys can submit on our website moonshot ideas to X, and we're very happy to take them from any and all places because we believe that ideas by themselves, raw technologies by themselves are worth something, but they don't reliably turn into something great. That the work that's really special happens primarily after the idea. So we have this huge pile of ideas on the table. There isn't an actual table, right? And then a lot of the fail fast, a lot of the work is how do you pick through all of these things on the table and throw them away as fast as possible, as efficiently as possible, but for good reasons, not for fake reasons. If you're like, oh, I don't like that one, it's easy to take it off the table, but you haven't actually added any value. That's not a good reason. If you pick one off the table and you say, hey, look, this one breaks the second law of thermodynamics, I think we can throw that one away without further discussion. Oh, look, this one is made of unobtainium, right? So we can throw that one away. Sadly, not all of them can be removed from the table as easily as those, and so you often have to do real work. Sometimes you have to build prototypes, you have to talk to the people who act in that ecosystem and say, if we built this thing, would it solve the problem? And then they say, not really. And you say, well, that's good to know. Thank goodness we didn't spend a huge amount of time and money building the thing only to discover at the end that that wasn't really going to solve the problem in the world. So that is one of the main muscles at X, is how do you get people both to feel good about throwing stuff onto the table and feel good about taking it back off the table. And the best case scenario, which has happened a few times at X, is when they both happen in the same meeting. When someone gets a brownie point from me or from others for having brought up a beautiful idea and in the same meeting helps us throw the idea away and gets 2 pieces of brownie point, that's failing fast. When they feel like they got brownie points for putting it on the table and taking it off in a half an hour meeting.
So I was about to pass this question, but then when you said that don't regret it tomorrow, that's why I came in here.
Good.
So both of you are people who have created the kind of impact which everyone here wants to create in their lives. But my question is that suppose you have a person like me, I have figured out that this is my passion, this is the problem I want to solve. But along the side, I need to stay relevant. I need to know the current affairs. I need to know, like read TechCrunch, Wired, Business Insider. There are like so many resources and all of them creating so much new information every day that if I spend time reading those, I won't solve my problem. I won't be doing my job. So my question to you is, along with following your passion, how do you spend your time and keep yourself updated?
So
what do you read?
both of these answers will be probably popular with you guys, but not popular with much of the rest of the world. But I feel pretty strongly about both of them. The first one is, I got lucky. I won't speak for Sebastian, but I got lucky. And I hope that you guys are calibrated on that, that the people who are the most successful usually worked fairly hard and they have some skill, so it wasn't entirely luck, but do not believe that there is not a huge amount of luck involved, or hold yourself to a standard as though there were not a huge amount of luck involved. It will drive you crazy totally unfairly. The second thing is, I don't read business books. Actually, mostly, I read The Economist every week. But I mostly don't even read the news, especially now. It's driving me crazy. You know what I spend time doing? I talk to people, and I really listen to them. The things that I was describing about how X is set up, that's not taken from some great business book I read. I'm actually managing people, and I'm really paying attention to what moves their needle. It's like this observation is just watching people and saying like, oh, I told you to do that, and you're doing this. Why are you doing that? You just go ask them. I have behaviors that you won't read about in a business book, but I didn't get them from a business book or any collection of them. For example, here's one of my mantras. If you come into my office and you tell me I'm an idiot, I will say, the first words out of my mouth will absolutely be thank you, and very likely I will come around the table and give you a hug. Because if you don't do that, that will be the last time that person ever says anything hard to you, and probably the last time anyone in the organization ever says anything hard and therefore important for you to know to you. But that's an observation about humans and like how they operate. So I strongly believe that there's a ton that can be learned from working hard, being open to the fact that you're wrong a lot of the time, because we're all wrong a lot of the time, and really listening to the people around you. They have a lot to teach you. So that doesn't mean never read any books, but I think that the idea that you can somehow program yourself by cleverly picking the 1% of the fire hose of data that's coming at you and only listening to that 1% is a bit of a fantasy.
Thank you.
Yeah, my question is a little bit in line with that. So that's a fireside chat, so personal questions are okay, I think. So obviously, you are a huge inspiration and very successful in what you are doing. Is there anything you had to stop doing or anything you had to sacrifice during that time?
Yeah, I mean, I've certainly had to sacrifice a lot of things, but a few of them that have been particularly hard for me, for example, I'm a people pleaser. I like to resolve conflict, and I physically feel, I don't know, sick might be an exaggeration, but uncomfortable when people around me fight. Even if they work for me, I feel bad about it. Obviously, that's totally dysfunctional for me to be running an organization when I can't be direct and have conflict with people. It's really important that I be able to do that. So that's an example of something that I have learned how to do, and I have mantras and structures, for emotional structures, that to get me to do it, and to do it quickly, in fact. But it still doesn't feel very good when I do it, and that's the sort of thing I kind of wish I didn't. I'm a card-carrying nerd, and yet I don't actually spend very much of my time on those things. That's another sacrifice. I want to end up actually tinkering and like thinking of some of the new stuff. I'm an entrepreneur. I want to like actually run one of the projects at X. There's a real sense in which I actually don't want the job that I have. The reason that I'm doing it is because I believe that I'm nurturing this group of people and making something possible that wouldn't be possible otherwise, and that gives me a real sense of purpose, even though on a day-to-day basis, it's kind of not what would be most fun for me. So that's another example.
Thank you.
Hi, Sebastian. Hi, Astro. I'm curious if you guys think that there's like opportunity to create a startup around like a dating application that uses machine learning and AI, because we all know divorce is like a giant problem in our country. But like, maybe that uses like Google Glass or something to create perfect matches. Or do you think like there's not enough? I'm
totally
like,
letting Sebastian take this one.
Oh my God.
Great question.
Sorry, what was the question? Build it.
So do you think like there could be like a startup like kind of like Tinder that uses machine learning and AI to create like perfect relationships so you can avoid divorce in the future?
So let me answer this a bit differently. The number of emails I get, for whatever stupid reason, mostly from Germans, turns out, because I was on German television in some futuristic show, of people who have built contraptions that solve climate change and make clocks go backwards, is huge. And sometimes it drives me nuts to see that people like spend so much time inventing things. I look at them and say, why? Maybe, I mean, fixing divorces is a good thing, but what I often find is that people are taken by a technical idea. They find, oh my, what if let's say combine, I'm going to pull you, if you allow me to, say Tinder with machine learning. It's a technical idea. But for me, the first step is always to think about the problem. So to give you an example, I have a lot of robotics colleagues, some very prominent ones are in the room here. And any robotics professor takes as a dogma that all problems in the world are solved by robots, right? So you'd go, for example, and would say, I build humanoid robots And what can they do? Well, how about elderly care? All of Japanese robotics, so half Japanese robotics does this. Like they have done it for 20 years. Put a humanoid robots, because since they're building a humanoid, it must be useful, right? And it must be useful for something. It's useful for everything. Let me find the most useful thing. It's elderly care. And then come to me and say, hey, what do you think about if I start a company on robots for elderly care that have 2 legs? And then I often say, that sounds great. Let's do one little excursion, okay? Suppose you want to solve the elderly care problem, the ones you want to solve, whatever that one is. Let's think what's the best solution for that problem. And if it still involves a robot, then start your company. Right? So suppose you want to solve the divorce problem in this country. You really want to solve it. You want fewer divorces, say, for whatever reason. Then let's figure out what is the best solution to this problem. And if you come up and think it's machine learning on Tinder, then build it. Anyhow.
I think that's a fine answer. I would also say that machine learning and Tinder might not make our list at X, but the general answer at X would be how long does it take for you to think about it and talk to people, and how long does it take for you to make a prototype of it? Because if you can make a prototype of it really fast, the right answer might be, don't worry about it, just like make it and try it. You'd be amazed what making it and trying it, like maybe it's going to go supernova and you don't have to have these arguments with idiots who don't understand it like us. Or maybe it turns out that it's actually not a good idea, and then that'll be the fastest way to discover that it's not a good idea. So that's not always the right thing to do, but that one sounds like you could prototype something so fast that it might actually be faster to just make it instead of trying to figure out whether you're right or not.
I'm fortunately, really unfortunately, out of time. We have a few seconds left. Astro, it's been
Sebastian,
great.
Thank you. I want to end by saying that...
don't listen.
That's so funny. That's exactly what I was going to say. So when I started at X a long time ago, I reported to Sebastian, and he gave me, so he was my manager, and I really admire you, Sebastian. And I just want to leave these guys with something that I think about. And I know you said it tongue-in-cheek, and I'm going to say it partly to tease you, but I also mean it sincerely to them, and I know you meant it sincerely to me. The first and only really sincere feedback that Sebastian ever gave me as my manager was, don't listen to your manager. And
you were good at it.
And
you were good at it.
And ironically, that was such important feedback for me that it's really stuck with me, and it's part of why I admire you. Thank you for being a guide for me and for all of us.
My manager sits over there, and I can see how it's cringing because it's exactly what I do.
Thank you, Sebastian.
Thank you.